Am I the asshole for fake sleeping all night to see if my wife is lying? The past couple of months, my wife has been complaining about our cats. She's been claiming that the cats wake her up constantly and that she's frustrated every night that she has to get up and open the door for the cats. Or the cats keep making noises, or the cats keep jumping on her. It got me to the point where she started saying she wants me to get rid of them. I've told her I've never seen or heard any of this, but she claims I sleep through it all. She kept telling me that she was getting less and less sleep and kept acting aggressive, blaming lack of sleep from the cats and that if I didn't get rid of them, she'd leave me. I legitimately started considering giving the cats to my sister until I noticed something. One morning, she claimed she had gotten up multiple times throughout the night to help the cats. She listed a bunch of times. I thought it was weird because I had been up until 4 a.m. and she claimed that she got up at 1 a.m. to open the door for them and a few times around 3 a.m. because they were meowing and jumping on her. I was in the bedroom the entire time while she slept, and I know none of this happened. Things weren't adding up, so I decided to run a test. I waited until she said she was going to bed, then I let the cats out of our bedroom. I lowered my phone brightness and faked going to sleep. I just laid there in my bed for the entire night bored, but I definitely did not fall asleep. I made sure to make timestamps every 30 minutes on my phone through Discord just to be sure. I marked down every noise my cats made. One cat had jumped down from something and made a little noise around 3:18 a.m. and one ate food relatively quietly by the bedroom door at 4:57 a.m. Other than that, nothing happened. Sure enough, my wife slept from 11 p.m. until 9 a.m. and that morning she claimed she had woken up at least 7 times to open doors from the cat noises and cats jumping on her. At this point, I was pissed because she was clearly lying to me. I was exhausted and fed up with the lies, so I bluntly called her out on it. I told her, "That's funny. I stayed up all night to monitor the cats and they weren't even in the room at all last night. I have timestamps and everything, so you've been lying to me and trying to convince me to get rid of my cats? Why?" She just sat there quietly shaking and looking pissed, then got up and left without answering. She came back hours later and ignored me whenever I talked, and when I asked her how I'm the bad guy in the situation, she finally said that I was treating her like a child by lying about sleeping and staying up all night just to see if she was lying or not. And that making timestamps and everything as if I was an investigator was going too far and makes me an obsessive asshole. I did it because she was threatening to make me get rid of the cats or she'd leave me, and her claims didn't add up. So am I the obsessive asshole here?
Am I the asshole for refusing to let my niece swim in our pool with the other kids? Last week was my son's 12th birthday party. My family showed up to our house. I greeted my sister, who said she wasn't planning on coming since my niece, 14, was on her period and didn't feel like going out, but thought this would cheer her up a bit. I welcomed them and they sat in the living room to eat. I was watching the kids swim when my sister and my niece approached the pool. My niece was in her swimsuit, ready to jump in with the other kids. I stopped them and asked my sister if she was really going to let my niece into the pool while on her period. She said it was fine, really, and that she took necessary precautions. I don't know what that meant as a guy, but still, I knew enough about periods to realize things could get messy. I said sorry, but I can't let my niece into the pool with the other kids in fear of any accidents. She angrily said my boys literally pee in the pool while we were talking, so accidents my ass. I just politely told her I was sorry, but it's different when dealing with blood than with urine, which is way too common in pools, by the way. Again, I said I wasn't going to allow any accidents on my son's birthday and suggested other activities for my niece. My sister blew up, calling me a raging, insensitive asshole, then, literally, and out of the blue, told my niece to get dressed because they were leaving. My parents then asked what was going on, and my sister told them I selfishly and meanly told her daughter off for wanting to swim in the pool with the other kids, just because she was on her period, and then she left. Mom gave me a look and shamed me up and down for how I treated my niece and sister. I said I didn't tell them to leave, just didn't agree on letting my niece use the pool when she's on her period, especially since I've asked my sister if she's done it before, and she said no. I honestly don't want to have to deal with cleaning up a bloody pool for the sake of what? Family? I just felt it was inappropriate, and besides, it's not like she's banned from the pool for good. Mom said I was still in the wrong, no matter how hard I try to spin shit. My wife said I didn't overreact, but at least I could have been nicer about it. Was I the asshole in this situation?
Yeah, you were the asshole. You have only boys. They definitely piss in that pool. But the little boys are not sharks. They're not going to smell one hit of blood and be like, all right, we're going to swim towards the niece. This man has no idea how women's body works, and there are 3 generations of women being like, you sound insane. And he's like, I'm not insane.
Am I the asshole for selling my ex-fiance's family heirloom? I, 27 female, was supposed to get married to my ex-fiance Mason, 29 male, on the 20th of this month. But last week a mutual friend caught him cheating on his ex Kim, so I called it off. Because it's so close to our wedding date, I already booked everything like the venue, catering, and everything else. I barely managed to get any money back, so in total I've lost $20,000. Last year I took out a loan to cover the cost of the wedding. The longer I take to repay, the more interest it gets. When we first got engaged, Mason agreed to share our finances, meaning had we got married, I would have been able to pay it off. This was supposed to be in our prenup, but because we didn't get married, it meant he no longer had to share finances. I asked him if he's willing to help and told him that I will go into debt if he doesn't, as I can't repay it alone. He told me it isn't my problem you took a loan that you can't pay back. When we got engaged, Mason proposed to me with a family heirloom belonging to his great-grandmother that was worth $25,000. When we canceled the wedding, he told me he wanted the ring back, but we never got around to arranging a time for him to pick it up. Because I didn't want to go in debt, I told him if he didn't agree to help me, that I would sell the ring. He didn't reply and ignored the messages. However, after talking to a mutual friend, I found out he read them and told everyone he didn't care because I wouldn't do it. Well, I did, and he blew up at me saying I was a petty bitch and I shouldn't have sold it.
Storytime about how my crazy sister tried to steal my husband and my child while I was in the army. My sister and I have always been competitive our entire lives. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime, it's sending me an Instagram. Her and I actually didn't grow up together. We don't have the same mother. We actually met when we were teenagers, which is not a good time to meet your sister because you're already very insecure at that time. She was always a little bit insecure about her looks, and it got a lot worse when she met me. She was always comparing herself to me and asking my dad which one of us he thought was prettier. My dad, of course, would get really upset and tell her not to be like that, but I could tell that she was always judging me. Sometimes she would make fun of the way I dressed, and if I ever wore a tank top or a crop top, she would call me McChubby. Mind you, I am not chubby at all, and even if I was, it's still so wrong to call someone that. Fast forward 10 years later, I married the man of my dreams. We have a really good relationship and a 1-year-old. I joined the army straight out of high school, and I really love it. We finally got pregnant after 3 years of trying. I was told I was going to be stationed away for 2 months. My husband luckily has a job where he can work from home, and my mother lives really close to us, so I knew I was leaving the baby in good hands. My husband luckily supports me in everything I want to do, so he didn't have a problem with this. I would see my sister from time to time, but we never really hung out or anything, and she never really made an effort to meet our baby either. Last I'd heard, she'd been in a really bad relationship. Apparently, she even had to get a restraining order, and she had to move back home to live with my dad. When I finally ended up going overseas, my husband and I would Zoom every single day. This is when things took a dark turn. My husband told me that my sister came by one day to visit, and that she was full on flirting with him, telling him how good looking he is. He asked me what he should do, and I told him to just act like normal. A few days later, my husband tells me that my sister comes over with a tray of lasagna, which she knows is his favorite dish. And here's the worst part. She brought a thong bikini and sat by the pool for hours. Apparently she wanted to get a tan. Then she asked him if they could watch a movie together, but my husband made up an excuse saying that he had to get back on his laptop for work. He even took a video of her while she was lounging in the pool, and we both laughed at it. A few days after that, he tells me she comes over crying. Apparently some guy wouldn't leave her alone, so she asked him if she could sleep over because she didn't feel safe. She decided to walk around the house in her underwear and an oversized t-shirt. But here's what really got to me. Apparently she was making an effort to get to know the baby, so she would go out of her way to feed him and play with him. And out of nowhere, the baby calls her mama. She never made an effort to see the baby when I was there, so why was she making an effort now? Then my sister sent me a picture of my husband and the baby asleep on the couch. And she sends me another message saying, "Your husband is so beautiful." After she sent me the picture of my baby and my husband sleeping on the couch, I asked her what she was doing there. Then she had the audacity to tell me that she just wanted to help my husband out. I told her that he didn't need any help and that she could leave the house. That's when she asked me if I was insecure about her being around my husband since she's so attractive. As soon as she said that, I tried calling her, but she wouldn't answer. Then she decided to ignore my phone calls and messages for 2 days. So I called my husband and told him what she said. The first thing he did was reassure me and told me that I had nothing to worry about and that he would tell her to leave himself. I didn't want her to start any drama in front of the baby, so I told my husband to just let her stay another night. Instead, I called my dear dad and I told him everything that she was doing. I even told my dad that he needed to go pick her up right away. My dad didn't even question me, he just went to get her. He knew exactly what she was like. 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from my husband laughing his head off. He tells me my dad came into the house and told her that she needed to leave with him. When she refused, my dad simply grabbed her by the arm and dragged her out of the house. And on the way out, he could hear my dad asking her what she thought she was doing. He even told her to stop walking around in her underwear around my husband. I only wish I could have seen it myself. But it doesn't end there. My sister decided to sneak out of my dad's house and back to mine. And this time she wore lingerie underneath a coat. When he opens the door, she takes off the coat, revealing the lingerie. My husband politely asked her to leave, but she said she knew he wanted her. Then he just shut the door in her face. I got home a few weeks after that, and I confronted my sister. She told me that I'm a bad wife for leaving my husband and my child, and that eventually he's gonna end up cheating on me. She denies having come to the house with the lingerie on. How should I handle the situation? Should I tell my dad or just let it go?
Just imagine showing up to your own funeral after your husband put a hit on you. Even though this sounds like a totally made-up scenario, this actually happened for a woman. In 2004, a woman named Noella Rukundo immigrated from Burundi, East Africa to Melbourne, Australia as a refugee. At the time, she was a mother of 5. She ended up meeting a man named Balanga Kalala. He was a refugee like she was and was currently working as a forklift operator. He had arrived in Melbourne in 2004 to flee a rebel army that had killed his wife and children when he was just 24 years old. Or this was his story that he told her. The both of them shared a social worker at the time. Kalala spoke English and Noella spoke Swahili, so the social worker would translate for the both of them. They ended up starting a relationship and moving together to Kings Park, which is in the suburbs of Melbourne, and they soon got married and had 3 children. This sounds like a completely romantic story, right? Well, things ended up taking a turn for the worse whenever Kalala began to suspect that Noella might be cheating on him. So what was Kalala's response to thinking his wife might be cheating on him without any proof? He paid nearly $7,000 to a group of men to kill her. Noella ended up getting news of her stepmother passing away, so she ended up flying back to her hometown for the funeral. This was January 21st of 2015. Kalala ended up calling her on the phone, and he instructed her to go outside and get some fresh air. And she was immediately confronted by an armed man who directed her to get into the vehicle. When she got into the vehicle, there was 2 other armed men waiting for her inside. They then blindfolded her, took her to a warehouse, and tied her to a chair. And instead of doing what they were hired to do, they ended up telling her about Kalala's plan. They had a personal moral rule not to kill women or children. So they let her know that her husband put a hit on her. She did not believe their original claims on what was happening, so they ended up calling Kalala, putting him on speaker, and asking what they should do next, and he responded with kill her. Noella was so shocked by this information that she fainted hearing his response. So this is when they came together to make a plan to get... So because Noella didn't make it to her stepmother's funeral, her brother really started to worry. He called her hubby and asked him to send over money so the police could look into her disappearance. He did, and then on February 19th of 2015, the kidnappers dropped off Noella on the side of the road. They gave her all the evidence she needed to convict her husband of the crimes that he had committed, including a memory card. And they ended up telling her that she had about 80 hours to leave the country, or other people might not spare her life like they did. After this, she ended up contacting the Kenyan and Belgian embassies to help her get back to Australia, in addition to getting a hold of her pastor, explaining the situation and that she was alive and needed help. Back in Melbourne, her husband was telling everyone that Noella had died in an accident. He then held her funeral on February 22nd of 2015, and as people left her funeral, she stepped right out of the car. Kalala walked up to her, touched her shoulder, and said, "Is it a ghost?" To which she responded, "Surprise, I'm alive," and Kalala just started to profusely apologize. He was then sentenced to prison for 9 years. On my Instagram, there's another case about a man who tried to kidnap his wife.
For a little background, I got pregnant young and wasn't sure if I'd be able to support my baby. My parents didn't like the idea of me ending it. My sister, who can't have bio kids, stepped in and said she'd adopt the baby. My partner and I were a little apprehensive but agreed. At 12 weeks, doctors found deformities and essentially told us our baby could be born with Down syndrome. And at around 20 weeks, the baby was diagnosed. My sister then told us she no longer wanted the baby, as she didn't want a defective kid. My partner and I are raising our son, who does have Downs. Anyway, that was 2 years ago. My sister and her husband recently told the family that they would try for a baby again. My partner and I didn't congratulate them. They obviously zeroed in on it and asked if we were happy for them. I said, quote unquote, "No, I'm worried about your child. What if the baby is defective? Will you abandon that one too?" They got kind of stuttery, at which point I told my sister she didn't deserve to be a mother. She was really upset at this point and tried to turn it on me, saying that she let me keep my son because she knew I secretly wanted him. I couldn't correct her in front of family, but she knows full well that I desperately wanted to end it. We left pretty soon after, and now the family's calling up insulting me because I was too harsh. They seem to think that if I was actually worried about the baby, I should have spoken to my sister privately. I disagree. Sure, they could terminate it if they find out the baby is disabled, but many disabilities aren't found until after birth. I can't imagine what they'd do to that poor baby or child if it's something like autism that takes longer to diagnose. Quick edit. I was between my sister's house and my parents, and occasionally foster care, but we'll ignore that for now. When I got pregnant, I was living with my parents. They told me if I had a termination, I would not be welcome back in their home. I told my sister and asked if I could move in with her. She said I could only move in if I kept the baby so she could have it. I agreed, but wound up staying with my parents as I didn't want to live with the baby. When she backed out, I was going to get a procedure. My parents told me that they'd sell my dog for meat and burn my belongings if I do it. My sister then refused to let me move in with her because I had to face up to my mistakes. I then spent 3-ish weeks trying to find someone to adopt him. Everyone fell through. As someone who was in foster care, I will never, ever put a child through that. I went to therapy to bond with my baby and we kept him. We lived with my sister for 3 months while my partner was getting money together to rent our own place. So there you go. That's how we got our baby. And I am very much attached to him now and will be keeping him. But still, they seem to all think I'm in the wrong. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She She literally abandoned a child. Not sure why anyone thinks she wouldn't do it again. Sounds like you need to give her another dose of reality besides the one you just gave her. If you had a formal agreement, I might consider making her reneging available to the agency if that baby is defective, but only if you really feel strongly about it, because that'll cause a load more issues. And why do you even still talk to them? That's horrible. I try not to, but my grandfather is rich and I'm in the will. If I cut them off, I'll have to cut him off too. And who knows what they'll say to him. And kind of depending on that money to buy our own place so our son can have a better childhood. But I am very low contact. Everyone's the idiot here. Your sister is an idiot for referring to the baby as defective. But raising a child with disabilities, especially lifelong ones, is a lot to ask from someone. It can be a huge emotional, physical, and financial burden on someone. Just because she didn't feel equipped to adopt a child with Downs doesn't mean she'd be a horrible mother. You are the idiot. Abandoning this baby too? Your resentment stems from the fact you were forced to take responsibility for your mistake. You've accused your sister of abandoning your baby, which is in fact what you were trying to do. Her infertility isn't the same as your irresponsibility. I'm going to say no one sucks here. It is a tough situation. When the doctors found out about the baby's disability, it is the mother's choice if she wants to continue. You gave that choice to your sister when you made the agreement for her to adopt. She said no, she could not take care of a disabled child. You then took it on yourself to raise your baby. That is a wonderful choice of yours, but not everyone has what it takes to do that. My sister is disabled and is currently being cared for by the state because we could not take care of her. It is a very difficult situation. She never said she couldn't take care of a disabled child. She actually said she didn't want a defective baby. Let's not dress up her words. You realize OP really wanted to end the pregnancy, right? But sister talked her out of it, only changing her mind when OP is too far along. Then tried to say she did OP a favor. Getting termination is taking responsibility instead of having a kid someone really doesn't want. Instead, the sister made OP an unwilling parent. Nobody should be a reluctant parent. I, 41 male, have 2 teenage kids, Marcus and Maria. Marcus is quiet, introverted, likes to do art, and enjoys volunteering at charity events with advertising by creating posters and doing some work. Maria has much more active hobbies such as mixed martial arts. Maria has endometriosis, and Marcus has taken on an almost motherly role when she is in pain at some times. My father, 65, and mother, 66, asked if they could move in with us at the start of the global issue because they are higher risk individuals. My father and I had a rough relationship when I was younger because he always believed in hard love, so he doesn't know much about Marcus and Maria. They would both always comment to me about their behaviors and hobbies with comments such as, "He's not very manly," or "That's not very ladylike," and other such comments. I have expressed my dislike towards the comments, but he nags me, and I allowed him to as I wouldn't change his beliefs. It did anger me, but I learned to deal with it. Earlier today, I ran into a problem at work and had to stay a bit later, so my parents cooked for Marcus and Maria. When I came home, Maria and Marcus were both visibly upset, so I asked them what was wrong. They said they had told Maria to just suck it up while she was in pain, and told Marcus that he needed to stop being weak or be a useless man when he grew up. I saw red and told my parents to get out. They obviously put up a protest, but they left. They called me and left numerous voicemails about how I wouldn't care if they were to get sick. Now that I've had some time to rethink my actions, I think I'm an idiot because I should have tried and explained my issues with their comments again, instead of doing something like kicking them out in the spur of the moment. So, am I the idiot? Other info. Parents don't pay rent or bills, and I divorced kid's mother and got full custody. Not the idiot. It sounds like you have mentioned multiple times how you dislike that kind of comment. They refuse to adjust and keep said comments to themselves, causing emotional distress to your kids. Your house, your rules, and if they can't abide by those rules, they can leave. The issue is the mindset. My mom is in her mid-60s, and I'm trying to help her unlearn the toxic ideal she grew up with. Like she genuinely doesn't see what's wrong with some of the things she says, and we sit and talk about it. It's not OP's responsibility to help his parents unlearn their ways, but I really do hope they become better people before OP goes minimal or no contact. Not the idiot. Endometriosis is a serious condition, and it's wonderful that your son loves his sister enough to take care of her when she's dealing with it. Nurture your kids' personalities and interests. The world needs more soft, gentle men and more strong, capable women, both. There's no wrong way to be a man or a woman, as long as you're treating others with respect and kindness, in my opinion. Your parents aren't paying rent, and they're constantly talking down to your kids? Sorry, your kids are your primary concern now, not the parents. I hope they stay healthy, but that's no longer your concern. You are the idiot for letting this go on for this long. You should have made it clear from the start that these comments were unacceptable. Do you really think this is the first time they have ever made such comments infringement of your kids? You should have made it clear as soon as they first commented that staying with you is reliant on them not making comments like that. Basically, my son is in first grade, and his birthday is next week. We live in a small apartment, so I let him invite 5 friends. He was super excited, and I sent out invites to the parents over social media. All was good. He and his friends were talking about it in class because they were obviously excited. His teacher overheard and sent me an email Monday afternoon, basically telling me that the class rule for parties is similar to Valentine's, bringing treats, etc., and that you have to invite the entire class. I told her there is no way I'm hosting 25 kids in my small apartment, and she suggested I move the party to a nearby park instead. I told her that there is no way I'm watching and feeding 25 children either, and that I've never heard of this rule, and we certainly hadn't been invited to every other child's birthday party. She replied that it is indeed a rule even if others had skirted it, and if he didn't bring invitations for the whole class the next day, yesterday, he'd have to turn his behavior card to double red and miss recess. So instead, I took him out for the day, and we had a blast getting ice cream, getting a Happy Meal, and picking out a small early birthday present, and I explained in a simple way why we were doing what we were doing. I told my husband, and while he agrees the rule is stupid, he basically called me an idiot for being so petty and having our son miss his education. Basically, he's telling me that my feelings are right, but that all I did was hurt my child instead. I'm worried he has a point. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I'm a teacher and some schools have this rule, but you didn't break it. You said you invited them over social media. All they were doing at school was talking about the party, not handing out invitations. It wasn't the teacher's place to say anything, and moving a kid on a behavior chart to double red is not an appropriate consequence for not inviting the whole class at all. That's just an abuse of power. Behavior systems like that should only be based on the child and their actions, not anything to do with parents or outside of school activities. Absolutely ridiculous. Not the idiot. How can a school possibly dictate whom you invite into your own home? Is this a public school? I would pursue it with the principal, and if not, with the school board. If your child is penalized, I'd see a lawyer. Not the idiot. Your kid missing one day of school isn't hurting him. In fact, I give my kids a mental health day around their birthday every year. They play hooky, I take off work, and I do something fun with them one-on-one. It's a special tradition, and they both cherish those days. So it's kind of a complicated situation. I have 3 kids total, the 2 older ones with my ex, and now a baby with my fiance. The oldest was raised by their dad for 5 years, so he knows his father well, sees him, and speaks to him regularly. I was 4 months pregnant with our daughter when he left us for another woman. She too was pregnant. My daughter has a sister just 2 months younger than her. I didn't know about her or the other child until after the birth of both of our children. The interesting bit is my ex's middle name. It's Nicholas. We had decided to give our daughter the middle name Nicola after her father. The day before she was born, his own father died, and he begged me to change her middle name. Said he didn't want any kids ever named after him. Something about playing favorites in his family. 2 months later, when the woman he cheated with had her baby, he named her Nicola. And when I finally found out about it, the child was over a year old already. He yelled at me that it wasn't the same thing because he spelled it differently, and I shouldn't be angry, mad, or upset at all that he stole my daughter's identity and gave it to the child he replaced her with. Now I'm being told that I am an idiot for having my daughter, who still barely knows him, call him by his first name instead of dad. My thoughts are he stole her name and gave it to his other daughter, so he doesn't deserve to be called dad by her. She calls her stepfather dad and has for as long as she could talk. My now fiance is the one who has raised her and loved her since she was a baby. My oldest son still calls him dad and always has. I don't keep him from them regardless of how painful it was, and I don't correct my son. I let him have whatever relationship he wants with his dad. I respect that his dad raised him and he knows him and always has as his dad. My daughter has only ever known her stepfather as her dad. A friend told me I was being an idiot for gently correcting my daughter when she calls her bio dad, dad, rather than by his name, which she does because her older brother calls him dad. My daughter doesn't know her name was supposed to be something else. That's not something I'll ever tell her, that would just hurt her. She rarely sees her bio father. I have sole custody. No, I don't keep them from their father. He simply lives out of the city and is essentially homeless right now, couch surfing. Has been for years. She sees him maybe once every 3 to 4 months, and he never calls to talk to her. But he calls for his son every night, almost, and sees him as often as he can. I don't want to hurt my ex. He and I are actually on decent terms and friends with each other. There is no bitterness left. I'm literally just correcting her very gently. So, am I the idiot? Everyone's the idiot here. Your ex is a jerk, full stop. But you don't get to define the relationship or titles. You say you don't correct your son. He isn't making a mistake. If you try to say that your daughter can't have the same relationship with her bio dad as your son does, you're just going to put her in the middle. If they see him together and son calls him dad and she's not allowed to, she's going to wonder why. You are the idiot. You are using your kid to hurt him and confusing her. If she was naturally calling him by his name, I would not have thought you were an idiot for going on with it. But you are actually building a wall between them as a way to get revenge. So your older gets to have a bio dad, but the youngest cannot because you are hurt? She has nothing to do with you fighting over the name she could have had. You are wrong and you stink at being a parent. She'll end up just being caught between treating her bio dad as a random adult because you are teaching her to do so, and knowing that stepdad isn't a bio dad. This is parental alienation. You are the idiot. You're using this as petty revenge against your ex. There's no way around that. Your daughter should be allowed to call her bio dad and her stepdad whatever she feels comfortable with, without being coached to call them something else. You're essentially brainwashing your daughter against your ex because you're upset with the Nicola situation. Stop using your daughter as a means of revenge. For a bit of background, my parents have 5 children, of which I'm the oldest. There's an 8-year gap between my oldest brother and me, and they started popping my siblings out pretty frequently after he was born. My youngest sister is a toddler. My childhood was spent taking care of my siblings. I never went out with friends or dated cute boys because I was always too busy doing dinner, bed, and bath time for 4 children. When I got older, I signed permission slips and attended recitals and plays as a parent would. When I turned 18, I was made the official emergency contact. Even now, the youngest 2 call me mommy sometimes. About a year ago, my parents told us they were expecting another baby. I was 21 and moved out, but I stayed at my parents' house to care for my siblings during lockdown while my parents worked their essential jobs. This is pretty awful, but I wasn't happy for them. I made it clear that I had no desire to raise any more children for them. I told them explicitly that they could not ask me for anything concerning this child because I was ready to start living my life. This past month, they've begun to call me on my days off and asking me if I could watch my new brother because they want to have nights off. I have declined every time. This weekend, when they called and asked, I hung up the phone. My family is annoyed, and they keep sending angry texts and messages saying that I'm being selfish and that I took it too far. I still don't feel bad, but I need to know. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. What they're doing is called parentification. They are the ones being selfish. They brought another child into the world. It's their responsibility to parent. You made it perfectly clear where your boundaries are. Stand firm. Enjoy your life. This is exactly right. The idiots are OP's parents. OP is not the selfish one. Their parents are. And they took it too far, having children that they can't seem to be bothered to actually be parents. If they want nights off, they can take turns being the parent for a change. It is definitely not OP's responsibility. Not the idiot. They parentified you at a young age, robbed you of your own childhood, and are now so selfish they expect you to still raise their baby? Nope, nope, nope. If they have money to keep having babies, they can find money for a sitter or stay home. That's life. Not the idiot, but OP, be prepared. Your siblings are going to turn on you. Your parents are refusing to do their jobs as parents, since in their minds you won't fall in line. Their next course of action is to make your brother, whom I am guessing is nearly adult, take care of the baby. They are going to make your brother replace you as the caregiver, and they are going to blame you anytime he complains. It's not fair I can't go hang out with my friends. Well, it's OP's fault for abandoning us. I really want to do XYZ. Well, we have to work, and someone has to take care of the baby since OP won't. These are the type of people who will blame you for everything that goes wrong from here out.